this just gives me a like a written version of what was said, because I need to get into my notes and it saves me typing whilst we're talking. So so that's all right with you. So I loved your prep, by the way. I was just trying to print it off, but I really like this kind of impact filter thing that we're going on. And now I've just lost it because someone sent me a message. That's annoying. Yeah, so I like the kind of the idea of wanting to get your explanation right, and that's something I really love working on, and increasing your revenue. So tell me a little bit about that and what drove you to get that down.
My explanation.
Yeah. So what? Yeah, that you explaining it and lifting your revenue, because I guess. Okay, strip that back for a sec. Tell me what the big picture is. Like I say to people, tell me what helicopter you want to buy when you're earning millions. Like, what's the big picture?
Yeah, the big picture is, so every time I go to one of these courses, I learn something new. And recently, my conversation has always been 3 or 4 shockwave sessions. There's a large majority that then need other ones. I just didn't, I kind of get bored of seeing them back 6 times, frankly. It's just a lot of times. It's a lot of visits. And I'm like, oh, the same thing again.
Yeah.
And so that's where I wanted to switch it to 6, also because it can produce a lot more revenue. Okay. So that's one, because I prefer to do things that produce more revenue than less revenue. But even as those numbers I sent you, actually, what I really need to focus on is everyone that does shockwave gets orthotics. That's what it really proved to me I never even looked at those numbers, but orthotics probably make me just as much as shockwave, or could, because not everyone right now gets orthotics. It's just not everyone not. And then amnio is more of usually amnio for me is a second opinion thing. So they may have had surgery somewhere else, doing like an exostectomy on the Achilles.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, okay, well, you're not better. Let's do, shockwave to the insertion of the Achilles, and then we'll do the amnio as well. That's how that's the only like advanced thing that I do. So ideally, if I could only do shockwave, that would be great, right? Like I wouldn't have any qualms doing that. I have some colleagues that do that. Just right now, there's a lot of other stuff that fills the schedule.
Yeah. And so give me a bird's eye view of the practice then. Mm-hmm. So it's you and some other people.
I have 2 other partners, and there's 1 other associate. So we have 2 locations. We each produce about the same amount this year. We all produce that amount. Ben, he does more surgical intervention. Neil, it does a lot more of the ultra marathoners, and he's a triathlete and ultra marathoner and things like that. I tend to do more of the marketing for the practice, so that's what I enjoy doing. Is the marketing, the website, the social media, stuff like that. Neil does, so we have a good practice. This young guy that's in there right now, he's getting started, and so we have to fill up his schedule, and so that's kind of working on right now. But we do everything. We do everything with foot and ankle. We do surgery, non-surgical, things like that.
So it's all podiatry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And your ability to fit more sessions into your diary is what? Are you all working at capacity, or it's about?
Well, right now, January, February is a little bit slower. And so what I tend to do is when things get busier, I just don't have people follow up. And when it gets slower, I have them follow up more often. So for simple things, like for ingrown toenails, I don't have them come back if it's slow. If it's busy, if it's slow, then I'll have them come back. But currently I can fit them in, because when they schedule them out, they fit them in. And then the other overflow patients would go to the other doctors, would go to the other doctor that's younger.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's worth it, because we charge kind of a premium for it. We're doing about $250 per session. And so it ends up about $1,500 for those 6 sessions.
Yeah. And you're based where? Like
Massachusetts, right outside of Boston.
Yeah, but I mean in like a town center, in a out of town sort of shopping area. What's the?
We have 2 offices. One is in Worcester, and it's right by a hospital, a kind of a surgical center.
Yeah.
And there's primary care doctor offices. It's a kind of a medical area. So there's an oral surgeon, there's a pediatrician in our building, and there's a couple of other medical professionals. And then in the other office, it's kind of a higher, how do you say it, more affluent area where people have more money. That's in Westboro, where we just opened about 2 or 3 years ago, but that one's slower because we're having to do more SEO and Google AdWords and things like that to get that busy. So I'm at each location. I'm at Westboro 2 days and the other office 3 days.
And so if someone was going to, like a patient was going to be explaining your business to their friend, beyond saying it's a podiatry clinic, what would they say? What would you want them to say?
Yeah, I think currently what they say when they refer people is like, these are the guys you need to go see for your foot problem, whatever problem it is.
Yeah.
So that's what they would say. And they would probably say, and we treat a lot of people that are ultra marathoners and, runners and athletes and things like that.
So if you were to put your perfect patient into an avatar, so mine is 45 to 55-year-old male who is really into their sport, whatever it is, not like trying to be Iron Man or necessarily that, but someone that's just really into being active and doesn't want that to stop at any cost and has a fairly decent disposable income. They turn up in a nice car, they're chatty, they're confident, and they're like, look, kind of whatever it takes. They've come in knowing it's expensive. They're just like, fuck it, I just do it. That's my perfect patient. So what would your age, gender, all of that, what would they be?
Yeah, the majority of what I see, so my best one are usually second opinions where someone else has seen them for insertional Achilles tendonitis in terms of my largest check. So they might be someone that's been treated with physical therapy, treated with, dry needling, treated with everything else for insertional Achilles. And they may even have had like an exostectomy by an orthopedist. And then when they come over for the second opinion, those are like the best ones. They usually tend to be about 45-year-old driven males that do that. They're kind of athletic, but they're just not getting any better and they've just kind of given up. So those ones I know I can get them better.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a heel pain, either plantar fascia or Achilles. So that tends to be the most valuable patient because then they'll do everything. They'll do shockwave, they'll do amnio, they'll do orthotics, they'll do all of that. Yeah. And then there's the other group out there, like the 45-year-old females. They tend to be a little bit overweight, wanting to be active, and they get heel pain and they just can't get rid of it.
Yeah. And these people that see you, so in your work schedule over an 8-week period, let's just say 8 weeks for now, because it spans whether you do 4, 5, 6, 3 weeks of treatment. If I were to take week 1 of that 8 weeks and week 7, how many of the same names would I see there, percentage-wise?
So currently, I've been doing the shift to 6 sessions. So kind of what I've done in the past is what I've said, okay, if you've had pain less than 6 months, I would recommend 3 sessions. So up to this point, everyone's been getting 3 sessions, unless they're second opinions, in which case they're all getting 6 sessions. Yeah. And so that's typical. So you're going to see them there at least 3 times, and then I do a 6-week follow-up. And then if they are 80% better, then they're not going to get any more. They might. And I used to do 3 sessions plus PT. I've kind of stopped doing PT after I talked to you, and I'm just doing either more sessions or just giving it more time. Yeah. And so now you're seeing them on my schedule more. You're seeing them once a week for 6 weeks because I'm able to explain it. But it tends still to be patients that are over 6 months of pain. So if they have it over 6 months, and a lot of times what I'll do, and I didn't really learn this from you, but the pain in the butt, frankly, is scheduling 6. So what I do is I say, let's do 3. And then when I see you at the 3rd one, we're going to make a determination if we're going to do another 3. Most likely we will, unless there's any reason why not. Because usually they're seeing some improvement after the 3 mark, and then I'll just have them do the other 3. But the problem is the scheduling of 6, because it's kind of a pain.
Yeah. So.
And no one says no, Paul.
Yeah. No. I get that. So the pain of scheduling 6 is because of your time, their time, calendar, whatever. My view for you, therefore,
it's my staff. Actually, my staff never complains. I could schedule 6. They don't. Yeah. It's more of like I try to make it easy for patients. But go ahead.
So if that is a pain in the ass for anyone, my view would be, we need you for 6 sessions. I need the first 3 to be weekly, 1 a week for 3 weeks. The next 3, depending upon where you are at session 3, will depend how we schedule the next 3. 6 is the protocol, but we're either going to go weekly for the second 3, or every other week for the second 3, or in some scenarios, we might go every 3 weeks for the next 3. But it depends what milestone we hit come week 3 as to what we do. That's one route to go. And the reason why that's quite good, I actually do it differently. I try and schedule, I say to people 6 sessions, and ideally we'd have them all done inside 8 weeks.
Okay.
That's my verbiage. And the reason being is that I travel a lot, as you know, for work, and some of these people are affluent individuals, so they travel a lot for work. So I don't want to be in a situation where I've gone hard and fast. You need 6 sessions in 6 weeks, and they go, well, I'll start in October then because my schedule's round. I want them spending their money in my clinic now. So it's 6 sessions, ideally within 8 weeks. Most people do 1 a week for 6 weeks. That's what I say. My suggestion to you is, we've got 6 sessions. I need the first 3 to be weekly in an ideal world. We can stretch to 4 if we have to, but in an ideal world, I want 3 in the first 3 weeks. Depending upon where you are at week 3, and I'm actually not going to tell you the milestone, because my concern is you'll come in at week 3 and you'll be drawn to tell me what you think I want to hear. So just trust me on that. And then the next 3 sessions are going to be done over, just say hi to Mrs. H.
Hey.
Hi, Don. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good.
Good. Just delivering a cup of tea to the man.
Because we're British, we have to have tea with everything we do. Thank you. Yeah, got it. And so I think that might work better for you because it gives you ultimately flexibility.
Yeah, and I like your wording, 6 sessions within 8 weeks. I think they're going to accept that just fine.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't like to reinvent the wheel, so if that's working, I'm good at obeying.
And it's a great way that stops any objection about, and the key word there is ideally. Then if someone says, oh, but I've got a holiday in late March, and I go, it's fine, as long as we can get the first 3 done in 3 weeks. Then you've got the patient that says, I've got a competition in 4 weeks. And I've already said to them, you need 6 sessions. So I sometimes do 2 a week for 3 weeks.
Yep, to get them through. Okay. Because
I have a view, and this is a really strongly held view that I have, which I can't gain any traction with the Girders Myers or the Knoblocks or any of those people with it, which is, I think that it's well understood that giving shockwave therapy kickstarts the immune response you get from an acute injury. And that immune response you get from an acute injury, say a sprained ankle, is 72 hours where your body is working at a really, really high rate to try and heal you. And then in all studies, at 72 hours, it basically drops off a cliff. And it just leaves a lot of edema in the area. And basically, you start healing much, much slower. So if shockwave produces that 72 hours of magic, but without any damage, why are we not doing shockwave again on hour 73? I don't have a reasonable answer as to why we have to wait 7 days, as is the norm. The only thing that I do know is, just having done my PhD, science likes you to do interventions at weekly intervals.
And it's probably easier to schedule. There's a lot of reasons for that. But
Exactly. But my intervention for my PhD was every day, 4 days, shockwave. And so it's interesting that we sort of fell into what I consider to be dogma of weekly. Now, Helen Howe, you might say, I think she's mad, but Helen Howe in Scotland, she's all over LinkedIn and Facebook. She's one of the Venn Healthcare. We're recording this. She's a lovely lady. But she does everyone as standard once a fortnight. She sees people, everyone.
What's that, every 3 days?
No, once every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
So she does 3 sessions over 6 weeks. There's no science anywhere that says that.
It's
There's
just what,
nothing.
it's what you used to saying. Same thing. That's why when I got back from that conference and I had to change my wording, that's why I wanted to meet, is because just changing the wording is hard, because I've been 5 years saying it the same way.
Exactly.
And to
Exactly.
change that.
So I think that sniffing out what your patient wants early on, and this is the bit that I've never gone into in the conferences, sniffing out what your patient wants by what are the 3 things you can't do, what are the 3 things that you want to be able to do, and what's it going to mean if we achieve it, is helping me to understand, right, their goal is 4 weeks away. Like, I don't get 6 weeks of treatment protocol out of this person. Yeah. What I might do is discover they're doing, Chicago Marathon, and then 8 weeks later, they want to do whatever the other marathon is 8 weeks after Chicago. And then you go, so we'll do 3 sessions before Chicago, then we'll let them recover for a week or so. Then we'll do the next 3 sessions ahead of Ottawa Marathon or wherever it is they're going. So I try and figure out what their schedule might be by my triage questions early on, so that I then know how I'm going to adapt my protocol to suit their needs, make it patient-centric. But in the most case, it's 6 sessions, ideally within 8 weeks.
Okay, I'm good with that. And I almost think and this is something I have to talk to my buddies, is I've heard, like, I almost think I'm charging too little because no one ever says no. Like, very rarely. They might, and that's why I'm trying to do to 6, because I think with 6, maybe I'll get more no's, but I haven't. So I think it was more in my head that I'm not doing 6 than anything else. And so what I've heard is if you're not getting no's, you're not charging enough.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's something to be said for that. And there's 2 things. If no one's saying no, you're not charging enough. And if your schedule is over 75% full, you're too cheap. They're the 2 things, right? So if you've got less than 25% capacity in your diary, you should charge more, because some people will leave you.
Yeah, but for a lot of the stuff I do, it's insurance stuff. So I can only, whereas I need that's where I've thought, okay, maybe I'm not going to charge more for shockwave. That's where I'm going to add in, okay, every patient, no, I'm going to say orthotics. I'm going to add that on. So it's, instead of 1,500, it'll be 2,100 because of the orthotics, or doing kind of packaging with amnio as well. So that's where I'm trying to think, well, is that how I'm going to get more no's, was with doing that?
So here's how I have found the best way to bring orthotics in. Yeah. So someone comes and they've got insertional Achilles. Yeah. And I've just gone to town on EMTT, focus shockwave, raided up the calf, up the length of the Achilles. They understand all of that, right? And we'll come back to our verbiage on that in a second, because I know it's one of your focus things. Then I say to them, in an ideal world, I want to be giving you an orthotic as well, because what we're doing with the shockwave is we're treating the pathology. But the pathology came about because of typically a biomechanical fault. So I want to start treating the pathology, and at the right time where you can, because I don't know how you build yours, but we stand and walk over a pressure mat and we video, that sort of stuff. At the time at which I can see you move without an antalgic gait, so you're not walking and offloading against this pain, the second we're there, that's when I want to build your orthotics, because I want to build them right once. If I make your orthotics now to help you get through this pain, you're going to be walking differently because you have pain. So my assessment of your orthotic is going to be different. Now you might, I don't know if you put them in impression boxes or whatever. So that
we do a 3D scan. We do like the forward motion 3D scan. We used to use a pressure plate, but now we use this.
Yeah. So this works for you. So in other words, I bring the orthotic into the equation, as all of this treatment we're doing is getting rid of the pathology. Well, in 82% of the cases it is. But if we get rid of the pathology and you just go walking around with your same biomechanics, then there's a chance you bring that pathology back. So I wouldn't be doing my job correctly if I didn't at least suggest to you that we went down the route of having an orthotic built for you. However, that does take the cost up by, and I can't remember your numbers, I read them.
Like 600 more, yeah.
$600. For that $600, those orthotics are going to last you a minimum of 2 years. So we're talking about $20 a month for you to, or $25 a month for you to have orthotics in your shoes. So it is something that I do quite lightly. I know it's $600 up front, but actually when you think about, is it $25 a month? I haven't done the math.
Yeah, I usually say 5 years, and so for me it's like $10 a month. It's
$10 a month, right? 5 years, $10 a month. But wouldn't you love it if they came back after 2 years and had them tweaked a bit for another 600, right?
That would even be better.
Yeah.
What I say is similar. I say there's two things we're dealing with. One is the symptoms that you're dealing with, which would be, and the other is the mechanics of what's causing it. And I use a model of, like, imagine if you had like a leaky pipe. So you can treat the symptoms by putting a little bucket underneath there, or you can go and then fix the pipe. And so we're gonna treat the symptoms using the shock wave, using the other things that we do, but then we're gonna treat the mechanics, which is how your foot is functioning, so it doesn't keep coming back. So that's where we're gonna kind of tighten the pipe.
And what I would do immediately with your pricing is that the orthotics on their own are $700, but when they're bought with a package, they're $600. Just straight away. That $100 saving is, but if it's all through insurance, maybe it doesn't matter.
No,
but
it's cash, it's not insurance.
Yeah. But that call to action becomes really important, because it takes the sale from the checking account to the credit account. And they go, fuck it, I'm sticking it on my credit card.
Yeah, a lot of them, what I tell them, and the way we do it here is if they do everything together, they're going to get 10% off. So if you do all the shockwave and the amnio and the orthotics all at once, you're going to save a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of them, they get that 10. But if you do it, you can do as you can pay a la carte. So each time you come in for each individual thing, but I feel like you're going to need all of this, so you might as well, pay for it up front, and then you can get 10% off of that.
Yeah,
similar thing.
I think that if you know what the dollar amount is, it's more enticing than saying 10% or whatever the percentage is.
Yeah, so that would be what, 150 plus 60 plus 150. So that's 360 off if they do all of it, because the amnio is 1,500.
Yeah. So I would be saying to them, bought all together rather than bought individually, you save $360. Just steam straight on in there, and you will find most people are thinking about the saving. They're not thinking about the amount they're spending.
Yeah,
they're spending the 360 saving on something else as if it's free money they've been given. It's just a psychology of it.
Yep, good.
So let's go back to describing shockwave.
Okay.
Yeah. And remind me to come back to filling up the books of your new guy, because we got some good stuff on that too. So how do you describe shockwave? So I'm a new patient. Do you know what shockwave is? No, I haven't got a clue. What do you do? Okay.
So Paul, the way I usually do it, Paul, and this is something I want to improve on. My first visit, I show my presentation. I think I sent you that like checklist.
Yeah.
But usually what I do the first time someone comes in, I get x-rays. I'm going to watch a gait evaluation. Okay. Seeing how they walk. And then I'm going to explain about plantar fasciitis. So I'm going to share my screen and actually share exactly.
Yeah. Please do. Yeah.
If you don't mind here. Okay. So I have these things called, basically they're just Google Slides on everything that I do. So let's do plantar fasciitis, because that's one of the more common ones that I do.
And you doing this on a laptop? Are they looking at it on a TV screen? What's the?
So we have computer screens in every treatment room.
Yeah.
So and basically I just pull it up on there and I go over this and I say, well, Mrs. Joint, you have plantar fasciitis. So the plantar fascia is this ligament that goes from the bottom of the heel all the way to the front.
So I just have a blue screen at the moment. Am I?
Oh, Thank you. You're sharing your screen. Let me see here. Share. Let me see. Can you see that?
Hang on. Is it? There you go. Now I've got it.
So I usually say, okay, what is plantar fasciitis? I only use a couple of slides, but I want to explain. It's this white thing that goes from the heel to the ball of the foot. And the plantar fascia is really no different when you look at it under the microscope than the Achilles tendon or a ligament. They're all the same. They all are white. Then I say, okay, Paul, do you think white things have good blood supply or poor blood supply?
Yeah,
probably poor, right? And so that's the problem with the plantar fascia and with tendon. You probably heard of people getting tendonitis, but you never hear of anyone getting a musculitis because the muscles never get inflamed. It's the tendons because of the poor blood supply. And another thing that's real important to know is that if you have tightness on the back of the calf, which no one ever thinks they have, it's going to cause tightness on the bottom of the heel. That's why it's so important for us to treat not just the plantar fascia, but also the back of the calf, which is called equinus or tightness in the back of the calf. And when I first visit, I start with the regular things: icing, anti-inflammatories, night splint, morning stretch, all that stuff. And then I say, Mrs. Jones, on the next visit, we're going to get an ultrasound. And I'm going to compare the right foot to the left foot. And what you're going to notice here is on the left foot, it's a lot thicker and it's a lot blacker. And that's swelling, that's inflammation. And it's kind of like when the fascia gets scarred, it gets thickened. And there's really no way to get that down on its own. It's very, very lengthy process. And I want to say it's usually not due to a spur. Now, the x-rays you got today, you had a spur, but the spur isn't the problem. The spur doesn't cause the problem. It's the fascia that's thick. So what we have to do is we have to get down this thickness. And the best way is with like a meat tenderizer. And that's how I kind of equate the shockwave. So shockwave, it stimulates your body to heal this. If this was healed, it wouldn't hurt, but it's very, very thick. And those are pretty much the only two slides that I use with patients. And I explain. And so for me, the one thing that sells shockwave all the time is the ultrasound. And the ultrasound, it shows it thick, and they're like, yeah, I need the shockwave because we want to get it back to normal thickness, reduce the inflammation. And it's been thick for a long, long time. Usually my patients have had it for 3 to 6 months, and I show them one foot, show them the other foot. And the only way to get that down is either a high contouring orthotic to take the strain off of the fascia or the shockwave. So what shockwave does is it stimulates your body to heal itself. It jumpstarts the healing of your body because most things in our body, they should heal in 6 to 8 weeks. Even if you break your foot, it's going to heal in 6 to 8 weeks. How come your plantar fascia hasn't healed in 6 to 8 weeks? It just hasn't. And if it doesn't, it's because it's stalled. It's become taken from an acute phase, which is like a close phase, to more of a chronic phase. And so all I do is I take it back to the original starting. I re-injure it to start it to heal again. And that works about 82% of the time, and it speeds up the healing by 50%. That's what all my patients do. Now you might ask, how come I can't just do a cortisone? You could do a cortisone if it had normal thickness. I do cortisones if it's normal thickness. But if it's not normal, I don't find that cortisones are like a Band-Aid. And then most patients even say that. It's a Band-Aid. It'll last a month or two. So I don't find it very, very effective. Occasionally, if patients don't have any money for the shockwave, I'll do a cortisone and a high contouring orthotic. And for some patients, it's worked in the past. Because before I had shockwave, I used to do cortisone more.
Yeah.
That's how I explain it.
Yeah, and there are certain risks with cortisone. You might lose some.
I've given it a lot. I've never seen any problems. You could tear it, I guess. If you do too much of it, you could lose the fat pad. If you're doing multiple cortisones, usually I'm doing.
If people get on the cortisone train, isn't it? It's like it's bad. But yeah, I think people need to understand it's helping them for a short period of time. And I like to say about cortisone that if like my mother-in-law wanted to go to our wedding and she was hobbling and she wanted to be able to walk down the aisle nicely in a new dress and maybe dance a little bit at the wedding because it's a lifetime memory, a cortisone shot's perfect for that. But actually, if you're looking for long-term improvement, you really want to change the cellular activity in that plantar fascia, and shockwave is just about the best thing on the planet to do that. But bar none, in my opinion. Yeah,
I would say so. For cortisone, I find I maybe I do one a month. I don't do a lot of cortisone.
Yeah.
It's usually for people that don't have the finances to pay for shockwave. That tends to be who it is. or if they've had it maybe in the past. And
Yeah.
usually I'll do it. And then if the pain comes back, then I'm going to transition them after. Usually it's after a month to 2 months, then I'll do shockwave again. I'm okay doing a shockwave after a month because I think most of it's out of their system after a month.
Yeah, it's got very, very rapid half-life. Yeah. I think that the shockwave and the cortisone, if I'm honest, is people were really worried about rupture of Achilles primarily.
Yeah, I don't do it in
maybe
Achilles.
tendon.
I don't do
No,
cortisone. No one
but-
does it in Achilles.
No, but I think that that's the reason where that came from. And the other thing is, Wolfgang Schaden is obsessed with the pro-inflammatory response of shockwave. So if you've had a shockwave and you've got a big anti-inflammatory process, then what putting a pro-inflammatory process into that is is counterintuitive. But then I just had a question on YouTube the other day about if EMTT is reducing inflammation and shockwave is trying to produce inflammation, why does EMTT before shockwave have any benefit? And it's a very valid question. It's a very valid question, but I don't think it takes into account the nuances around whether shockwave is or is not pro-inflammatory, depending on what tissue you're using it on. So I think it's a nuanced point. But anyway, we're off topic. So
how was that? Anything you correct on that?
yeah, so in my opinion, it's very, very thorough, as you guys would say. And as a patient, I like to try and strip it back so that there's less information. What I love about what you're doing is the pictures are what they're taking away in their mind. That's the thing. I'm always thinking in a discussion about what's wrong and what we're going to do, what is Mrs. Jones taking home to Mr. Jones? And Mr. Jones says, how was the podiatrist today? Yeah, great. I've just given him $3,600 and he says he's going to fix my foot. Mr. Jones go, you did fucking what? We've got insurance. It's that conversation. So what your pictures and diagrams do really, really well is that's the information they're going to take away. Well, one side's really fat and that's bad, and one side's really thin and that's good, and the machine is gonna reduce that down. I think that everything you've said to someone that knows and understands it, I think it's one of the best presentations I've had in terms of why would I have shockwave on my plantar fascia. I think when you're dealing with a patient who can't even say plantar fascia because they come in and go plantar, they've Googled it, they just don't know how to say it, much less do they know what's going on, and they're hearing about shockwave for the first time. I like to make things super simple for them. So I really, really love the bit where you said it kickstarts the healing. The bit that I use for that, like the analogy, is when someone's heart stops, use a defibrillator. Shockwave is like a defibrillator for your healing system directly over your plantar fascia, put in Achilles tendon, whatever it is you're treating. And the thing about the human body is if we can manage to forage for nuts and berries or go and kill a wild boar, as was our ancestors' need for survival, and we can build a rustic camp, then our body goes, you're good. Actually, you want to achieve so much more. In fact, Mrs. Jones, you said you want to, run around with your grandchildren. You want to be able to walk for the breast cancer walk, and your goals are you want to achieve more than just foraging around for nuts and berries. So in today's day and age, we need to give the body a little bit of help to take it to the next level. We want you all the way back better. We don't want you part the way back better. So your body has stalled because it's not better in 6 to 8 weeks. We've got a tool that can do that 82% of the time, but we're also looking to get your body back to where it was, not just good enough to forage for berries and seeds. Yeah. So I'm adding on the bit where your body can get it better to a certain degree, but we're looking for you performing at a slightly higher level than that. And if you've got athletes, then that's a much easier sell than, you know, 58-year-old, 62-year-old Mrs. Jones who is worried about whether she can play with her grandkids or not. But this is where triaging a little bit about what it is they want it for is really helpful.
Yeah, I feel like one of the challenges, and I was talking to someone else about this before, Paul. The first visit, pretty much everything is covered by insurance for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're going to get X-rays, they're going to get a night splint, they're going to get foam rolling, maybe they'll buy a foam roller, they're going to get an anti-inflammatory, they're going to do all this for about 3 weeks. And then when I see them back in 3 weeks, they're going to get the ultrasound they pay for. Then they're going to get the shockwave spiel they're going to have to pay. Then they're going to get the orthotic spiel. And I think for a lot of mine, the hesitation is that it went from free to like, oh my gosh, look what happened. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. How come it all changed?
Yeah.
And this is something because I usually don't start with shockwave, only because unless they're a second opinion, in which case they've already tried the basics. I'm tending to try the basics. But I try to kind of plant the seed, okay, because the majority of my patients, this doesn't work. Paul, if I could just skip that first portion, I would skip everyone. But I feel like patients have to feel like they failed something before they want to go to the next thing. I don't know if you feel that way too.
Yeah, so we're not comparing apples with apples by comparing the American system with our system, because very few people walk in with any kind of insurance, right? They walk in knowing they're going to get their card out or wallet out and pay cash. So first session, new patient, 85% of the people that walk in here start a block of shockwave.
And you do the session that day.
When they walked in, they had no idea what shockwave was. And I think that, something I'd like you to try, Donald, something I'd like you to try is the next patient comes in, I'd like you to tell them, you know, for years, everyone that comes in, I've been taking them down this 3-week thing with their insurance, because for the first 3 weeks, everything's paid for. And I'm going to give you a night splint, and I'm going to do this. And my experience is very little of it works.
I'd say it works. You know what works on? Really, people that have really bad equinus.
Right.
Causing the plantar fascia. So if they loosen their calves, it makes it feel better because it's the equinus. Those are the only ones, in my opinion, that get enough relief.
So what I'd like you to do is to try telling that story to your patient. Say, okay, I'm happy to go through the 3 weeks of everything that's paid for, but you don't have equinus. And I can tell you, based upon however many years it is experience, that it's unlikely this is going to work. But I do it for people, and I always have done. And, you know, I end up in this ethical argument with myself. I'm actually doing this, not because I think it's the best thing for you, but because it's free for you. And in reality, I'm offsetting the pain of you having to get your hand in your wallet or your purse and pay me some money to do the things that actually work. And what I'm doing today, going forwards, is I'm just being upfront with people, because I feel I have an ethical obligation to do so. And I want to tell you that I think that's where we're headed, and I think we could be 3 weeks ahead of it, but it's expensive. And you might want to think about it for a few weeks, and that is fine, because that's my typical modus operandi. But I promised myself from yesterday, I'm just going to start being really upfront with patients, going, this is what your insurance pays for. And guess what insurance pays for? A lot of the really cheap stuff. Yeah.
That doesn't work long term. It's maybe part of it, but I don't think it's
And actually it gets people thinking they're doing stuff, and maybe some people are better at the end of it. But from my experience, people that are better, the people that have got raging equinus, you don't have it. So therefore, I just want to know, would you rather spend your money like today going forwards, or do you want to go through the 3 weeks? And listen, maybe you'll be an outlier to what I've learned over the last 30 years, but my guess is you won't be, and that's exactly where we'll be. Now, if you then, in 3 weeks' time, have that person there going, I'm no better, and you're bringing up shockwave again, they feel like a goose because they've just wasted 3 weeks of them not getting better. Or by week 2, when the night splint's uncomfortable and blah, 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 they go, fuck it, can we just start that shockwave, please? So even the ones that go, oh, I want to go for the free stuff, I've not failed anything yet. You've given them the opportunity. So by the time we're talking about the money, it's a fait accompli, they're definitely doing it. And they actually feel a bit stupid that they didn't listen to you in the first place. So you will start to see it transition. And that story that you just said, where, you know what, unless they've got Aquinas, it just doesn't work. With that amount of passion, as a patient, I'm going, fuck the free stuff. Can you start today? You're not getting any no's, so people don't care about the money, right? So you're only doing it.
I'm doing it because I get a level 4 office visit. I get paid for the night splint. I get paid, you know what I'm saying? It's because I get paid for all these things. Insurance covers it, but then everyone slips. It's kind of like giving someone a topical antifungal and then putting them on the pills after the topical doesn't work. Why do you do it? Well, because insurance covers the topical and you know.
Yeah. So if your practice isn't going to suffer by not having those dollars come in because you're making so much more from the shockwave, and you switch everyone to 6. And by the way, my protocol is now 6. Then I see you in 6 weeks. Then I see you 12 weeks. So 6, 6, 6.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. When I follow up with you at 6 weeks, if you are 80% or more better, you pay me for my time. You're in and out in no time, and you're gone. And actually, I'm not going to see you at the 12-week mark, am I? I mean, unless it's going to be a quick email. If I see you at 6 weeks and you're less than 80% better, we're doing a booster session right there and then. So you're paying me like the a la carte version of a single session, if you want and everyone wants. Yeah. Then I see you again at 12 weeks and you go, oh, I was really good for a couple of weeks after that booster session. And they're saying to me, am I all right to have another one? And I go, sure, yeah, no problem. And those people often start coming to me once a month for a top up.
You know, and I had a patient recently, he just finished, because I record the number of sessions. He's like in session 11. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a really tall, heavy basketball, you know, probably about my age. And then what I find is where I do really well with the orthotics now is like at that 11th session, like this guy's dumped so much into his foot. And I'm like, hey guy, you know, you're a big guy. What you really need now is an orthotic to offload that fascia. So you don't have to keep seeing me and do more of these sessions. So I sometimes find that at the end of the sessions, there was another patient with second metatarsal pain that I was doing. She did 6 sessions and she was, you know, and I think a lot of it is, I think a lot of the finesse of the shockwave stuff, which you know, and you've taught me, is like that 6 to 8 week follow-up is like how to measure it, because patients are horrible at measuring it, because the note that my assistant puts in the door is they're no better. And I go in there thinking to myself, oh my goodness, there's no better. But really it's how you ask the questions.
Yeah, exactly.
And most of them, oh yeah, well, I am better. It doesn't hurt anymore in the morning. Oh, okay. Well, now the time is to offload with the orthotic, the high contouring orthotic. I'm like, okay. And then they'll usually say, but I've tried it in the past. Well, you know, what were they made like, you know, things like that. And, oh yeah, this is what you need now. And that's where I find I do a really good job.
Yeah, but not even getting into what were they made like. The orthotic was being put into a situation where no one had actually tried to do anything to the pathology. Because you're working on the pathology, your foot will accept the orthotic this time. Forget the fact that my orthotics are superior, I'm a better podiatrist, you know, you can joke and be cute about that. Forget the fact that, you know, I'm better looking, I'm a better podiatrist, my orthotics are better. Forget all of that. They weren't taking care of the pathology. So they were sticking you with a painful plantar fascia or painful Achilles into an orthotic. And guess what? It didn't make it better because you've still got the painful Achilles and orthotic. What we need to do is a two-pronged approach. And I would also urge you to just make the orthotic pretty much a mandatory part of what you're offering. The same way as you're saying it's 6 sessions, you say it's 6 sessions, and usually at session 4, I'm measuring you for your orthotic, provided you can walk without an antalgic gait. And that means that I don't know how long it takes for your orthotics to come back to you, 1 or 2 weeks.
3 weeks,
yeah. So you might want to say, we'll do it at week 3. If your pain is reduced by at least 50%, we'll measure you at week 3. And that means that by the time you come back at week 6, more than likely you're going to have your orthotic. You might need to come back the week after to collect them, but pretty much your orthotic's going to be ready then. And so you just make it part of the mandatory verbiage. And if someone goes, that's a bit expensive, doc, you go, well, hey, look, separate out the orthotics, that drops it by $600. The package is good now. And they go, yeah. So listen, we'll revisit the orthotics later on. So you're not discounting, you're just going, pay for the shockwave, we'll revisit the orthotics later on. But if you just make it part of your bigger package. Now, the reason I was asking whether the people were the same week 1 and week 7 of your 8-week period is because if you're going to change this modus operandi, that like we're discussing, and I'm just giving you advice, you can take it or leave it, right? But are there going to be people coming in going, hang on a minute, this used to be 3 sessions and no, like, what's changed? You've got to have your stuff to tell them, because it is easy to do this on your next new patient. They don't know. Like I'm assuming you haven't got big price lists published all over the internet. So it's easy to do because the price is just the price. Yeah. So,
Yep.
But you're returning people, they're the tricky ones when you fucked about with your price. Because they come in.
What do you mean? The price is the price. The price is $250 for everyone.
Yeah, but if they came in and had 3 sessions of shockwave.
Okay. Yep.
And then you're saying 6 plus orthotics is this number. They used to come in and pay $250, and now you're telling them it's $3.5 grand or whatever the number. You know, it's suddenly it's. So you've got to think about when they come in. You go, oh, Jimmy, you've been in 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
So last time you were in, this was the scenario, and we can still do an a la carte service for you, but people do like the saving when they buy it all together. Did we make orthotics for you last time? We didn't. Right. Okay. My apologies. You know, and you go down that route, and because those people coming back, and this might be 3 years from now, someone comes in and you haven't seen them for 3 years, and they're going, sorry, Don, what? It's how much? Because it would be a big sea change. You'll get used to telling people $5 grand or whatever, and you'll be like, what? Why is he stressed out about this? Because last time he came in, he was paying you $250 3 times, $750 done. Now you're asking him for several $1,000s. He's like, where's this come from? So you just need to be careful that returning names into your diary, you have a quick read of the notes and figure out, well, what would they have paid? And how do we now bridge the gap between where their brain is and where we're at?
Yeah. What I tend to do now for my 3rd visit patients is I'll switch them and add another 3. So I'm practicing that, adding the other 3 on top of it. Or frankly, what happens is at the 6th week, that's when I add the other 3. They see me in 6 weeks. And because a lot of this has to do with billing, frankly, because the reason for the first visit, because I can bill high. The last visit, I'm doing an office visit as well. So I'm billing that. But I don't, in the long term, it doesn't really, it's going to all wash if I could just do more and better. So, and I think
can you offer?
Go ahead.
Can you offer payment plans to people who are struggling to afford it?
We have something called Care Credit, so it's a credit card. They can do it for 12 months, interest free.
So how does that work?
So it's on the way out. They put their information in a little thing, and it'll say if they're qualified for a credit card, and they can put amnio, orthotics, shockwave, everything on there, and they get 12 months to pay it off with no interest. But then if they go past 12 months, they get all that interest tagged on. And I think we cover a portion of the interest. Maybe 6 or 8% of that goes towards paying the interest.
This is a company in the States.
Yeah, it's for dentistry. It started out with dentistry for big dental cases, but it's called Care Credit. Yeah, it's just a credit card. They get a credit card. If they qualify for the credit card. So if they have problems, we don't do payment plans, but they can use that Care Credit.
Okay, that's quite a good system. Okay, let's go back to the chit chat, right? So one of the things, just bear with me one sec. I'm forever getting messages through. Okay, that's fine. So we're 10 minutes left. So what I want to do now, I've had yours and we've talked about that. I've had a rethink as we've been talking. I really like your the way that you present it and explain it. Typically, I'm talking to people and saying, how are you going to describe what shockwave is? So you've described the treatment package and the reason for using shockwave, and you said, you know, it's like a meat tenderizer and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of don't like, for me, saying the meat tenderizer bit, because I know that we're, you know, it's quite a hard hitting thing, but if anyone's heard anything about shockwave and then they think about meat tender, you know what I mean? Like in my head, I'm going, fuck, that sounds painful. So I like to really work around shockwave as being something that's stimulating their cells.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm reversing my decision on yours being shorter, because you're not just describing shockwave, you're explaining the whole process and the why. And I think it's really valid. What I'd like you to do is to finish and just recap, so they've got 3 main takeaway points.
Okay.
Yeah, so you go, so just to recap, your plantar fascia is probably double the size it should be. The reason that we need to treat this with shockwave therapy is we're going to, and whatever you want to say, we're going to change the cellular matrix by using shockwave. We're going to use your stem cells to treat successfully. We're going to bring that size down so it's roughly equal to your other side, and that will remove pain. You know, just come up with something that is short and sweet at the end. Think about it like this. It's the goodie bag to take home to wife, husband, partner. You're just going to gift wrap the things that they're going to say that justifies the money they've just spent.
Now, the question I have for you is, where does, I like that. I like the idea of simplifying. The challenge I have is when I see them the first visit, I kind of create, I kind of divide all things I treat into reducing inflammation, reducing tightness, and then reducing stress. So I tend to take one thing from each of those. So for the tightness, they're usually doing something on the back of the calf. So it's going to be foam rolling, night splint, morning stretch, things like that. That's where it gets a little confusing. And I usually write it down on a piece of paper, that paper I gave you. But I think that paper is overwhelming for patients. It's just too much stuff.
Yes, it's a lot of info, yeah.
You know,
but you'll have some people that are really researchers and they love it, and other people who, I'm not the guy that's going to read that. I'm going to listen to what you say, and I'm going to go away and I'm going to do it. And if there's something I can't remember, I'm going to scan it till I see the bit that jumps out at me. So you can have all sorts of different patients. So it's really useful, because for the people like me, you're going to go, well, didn't you read that thing? And then I'm in the awkward seat.
mm-hmm.
I have no argument with you, because
I don't think just doing shockwave without treating the equinus is very long-term, very beneficial. Just like doing it without treating the type of shoe gear or the orthotic that goes in the type of shoe. So they have to treat those other things as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that from your explanation, though, whatever it is, whether you're explaining equinus and that they need to do a foam roller, explaining why they need to do shockwave on their plantar fascia, explaining, you know, I just think that you are a very, very good storyteller, very, very good explainer. I think you need to see it like a funnel. I'm going to drop all the information in
and then recap it.
But the last 3 bits that drop out, which are the 3 bits you're going to remember, are just remember, we're stretching because it ain't going to get better unless we get rid of this equinus. This is something that needs to be done regularly, because if you don't, you can't just do a big stretch one day and then leave it for 7 days. It's got to be every single day. This needs attention because it tightens up again. And at the point at which you've got rid of the tension in your calf, your foot will start to feel better, but we still haven't addressed the pathology under the foot. That's where shockwave comes in. You know, you just need to drip feed the last 3 points. So you can pour all the information through. The last 3 drops that come out have got to be that just remember.
Good. I'll do that.
And that's the bit they take home and tell partner.
Now, when I'm doing this, I usually have 20 minutes for the appointment. So usually I'm not doing treatment on the first visit just because I don't have time. And usually I'm scheduling those, because it's usually at the next visit where I'm doing an ultrasound and then doing the shockwave treatment, unless I made more time for these appointments. Just letting you know kind of what I do.
Yeah. So that's going to be your choice. So do you have two types, shockwave and EMTT, or you have?
No, I have two radial machines, one in each office, and then I have a focused and a soft wave, which is unfocused. They gave us the soft wave, so that's why we're using that one. But we're having about the same results with it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I have two radial and two focused, basically.
But you do all the treatments. You don't have someone that comes in and does the treatment. No. Okay.
My partners, I like the idea, but my partners don't. And I think listening to you guys enough, I think it's better for me to do it anyway. So
yeah, I personally I like to do it. Just because I passed it on and actually the results went downhill, and that's a big shout for it's how you do it as well.
It's not just, it's how you use the machine, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's how you drive it. So a car's a car, but I get behind the wheel of it, or my 85-year-old mother gets behind the wheel of it. It's two different driving experiences, right? So I think that I like the idea of treatment on the first session. I have to say, I really, it's one of my big things, because the patient comes in full of fear, expectation, pain, all that stuff, and doing something there and then, I think is a really important.
And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll ask my staff, hey, do we have time? So I'll ask my staff, and if we have time and they're willing to wait, they can wait, because I might be blocked up, because I don't have a day where I do consults all on one day and then treatments the other day. It's usually a mixture. A consult is every two an hour or something like that.
Yeah, and again, I like that. And I think that's great. That's the car salesman when you ask for $1,000 off, and they go, let me just go and speak to my boss, and they go in the next room and scratch their ass. There is no boss. They come back out and go, he'll do $850 for you, but that's the maximum. It's that kind of thing. Let's see if we can fit you in. It's genuine, but let me see if I can fit you in. If you can, they're like, oh, amazing, and they're all in. So
how about the Motrin thing though? You've told me before it doesn't matter. You're okay with them if they've taken some anti-inflammatories a couple days before?
Honestly, again, I think the whole inflammatory thing is really overstated.
Okay.
And so if somebody is taking anti-inflammatories for another condition regularly, that's their new homeostasis. So when you add shockwave, that's what their system is. If they took an anti-inflammatory 2 days ago, it's having fuck all impact on what's happening now. If they've just started taking it yesterday and they plan to keep taking it for the next week, and you're doing shockwave, I'm not that, between us girls, I'm not that bothered. But I would say to them, it might reduce the effect of the shockwave. But if it's giving you a lot of pain relief, I understand why you want to keep taking it. But it might affect the full effect of the shockwave.
It's just be open. Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, but honestly, I think it's really overstated. So there's that. So and then if you can get them in, I just think it's great, because
I think I can. I'll make it work. I'll just tell my staff. I'll make it work.
Because the other thing is, when people go away and they have time to think about it, we talk about these break points. So if I'm with you as a patient and I go, I want you to do 6 weeks of shockwave, it's going to be $1,500. Go through and see Joseph on the front desk, and they go through. The time they've walked away from me, who's in the power seat, and they're listening to everything I say, and they're in front of Josephine on the front desk, who has no power, no information, no say-so, the number of times that a patient would go, well, I'll book back in for next week and I'll see how I feel then. It's called a break point. Whereas if I'm the one giving them the card machine and going, right, pay, everything all happens, beautifully well, and they always do it. So giving them till 3 days later to come back and have the treatment, to me, it's too much of a break point.
Well, and that's why I tend to do the initial things first, anti-inflammatories for 2 weeks, see them back at 3. They're off the anti-inflammatories. They're not better. Getting the ultrasound. Okay, I'm in. That stuff didn't work. Let's go. Yeah. And I do that second visit. Ultrasound, shockwave, everything that second visit. Yeah. But I'm okay trying this other way.
Yeah. I think it'd be great for you, great for your scheduling, and I think there's 3 and 3. So I just want to finish off by coming back to Do you mind if I just go through my verbiage that I do with
Please.
my patients?
Please.
Because it should never be that a client of mine drops theirs and takes mine. I think what's beautiful is you've got yours and it's well formed, and you go, I like that, I like that, and I like that. I'm going to try those.
Show how you would do orthotics and amnio as well.
If what, sorry?
So show how you would include orthotics and amnio when you tell me it, like where that would fall. So tell me your.
Yeah. Okay. So Donald, mind if I call you Don?
Sure.
What we've done is you've been a really great historian. You've explained to me everything about your heel pain, and I now really believe that I understand that. And we haven't got an ultrasound scan it yet, but that's exactly what I intend to do. But I believe what we've got here is quite a chronic case of plantar fasciitis. And if all you need to understand about plantar fasciitis is you've got this piece of tissue that goes from your heel to the front of your foot, and it goes into these little slips, and that's become much larger, inflamed, if you will. And you will continue to have pain while it sits in that state. There is something going on in that foot that isn't going on the other foot, which means that your body is just not healing that anymore. And what we need to do is to do everything possible to get that better, because these can be an absolute bitch to get better. And I want to make sure that we do everything possible. So I'm going to lay out some options to you, and I'm going to tell you that the best option costs the most money, and it is expensive, but let's just talk about what else is open to you. So we could do nothing, and you could go off and you could try a bunch of other people, and that's okay. If that's what you want to do, then you can do that. I don't like it because I don't think you're going to get better. I can give you some exercises and a night splint, and we can send you off. And about 7% of people that do that get better. And that's not great for my reputation. It's not great for your foot. So again, it's a much cheaper route, but I don't like balancing economics versus health. I much prefer just concentrating on health. And don't forget, I am going somewhere that's more expensive. You don't have to do it. I'm just telling you that this is the best thing for you. Then what we can do is we can get you back, and we can do shockwave therapy. Shockwave therapy is a plug-in modality where we put energy into your tissues, which stirs up your cells, calls on your stem cells to recreate new cells. It will knock everything out the way that is in the way. So all this extra fluid and ground substance, it will help to push that away, and it will stimulate new cells, if you like, filling up all those little holes that are causing the problem. The net result is somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks from us doing that treatment, you will have, hopefully, in 82% of the time, a nice normal sized plantar fascia, and you'll be pain-free. And you'll be really, really happy. Now, on top of that, because that's the pathology, we can inject amnio, and so we can actually put some cell life into that tendon at the same time as we're stirring up your cell life. So we're taking stuff from outside that we know works well and stimulating yours, and together that's like the elixir supernova in your plantar fascia. So that's like next level. All of that stuff takes care of the pathology that your body isn't doing on its own. And price point wise, we're talking $3,000 for that. What we haven't discussed is the biomechanical deficiencies that have led to this. And often that is just a little bit of a drop in your arch. It could be the fact your big toe doesn't move quite as well as it used to. It could be some of the bones in your foot aren't functioning the way they used to. As we get older, we use up the little spaces in all our joints throughout the body, and that's the reason why a slightly dysfunctional foot can cause a shoulder pain and a headache in some extreme examples. So what we want to do is to also take care of the biomechanics. A, to stop this from coming back when we successfully treat it, but also we need to stop you being on this cyclical thing of this becoming an ongoing problem for you. We want to nip it in the bud now. So we do that in a two-pronged approach. We're going to get rid of the pathology, and we're going to get rid of the reason why the pathology came in the first place. All of that, everything together, would cost $5,000. But when people take the whole package, because it gives us better results, better Google reviews, happier customers, and our business grows, we're prepared to invest in that, you marketing our business because you're so much better. So we drop $360 off that total price. That represents 10%, but it's $360 in your pocket, not mine, because you made the right choice today about your health. Now, I know that's a lot of information. So what I want to do, while you think about that, come across, I'm going to do the ultrasound scan. Let's take a look, because I want to show you exactly how much difference the measurement is between the two. How's that sound? Great. Here's the imaging. It's obvious for us to see, of everything that we said earlier, where's your head at? Where do you think you want to go? And 99 times out of 100, they go, I want everything. Because the explanation is, why am I going to do 50% of the job? Like who's going to just have shockwave? If you can have shockwave and you can put some extracellular activity in there, and definitely everyone's having orthotics. They may not understand the amnio, they may not like the idea of injection, they may pull out of that section. And if they go, oh, I'm not sure about the amnio, hey, look, if we're struggling, we can always put that in at a later date. But if you just do those two together, I shouldn't really do this, but I'll tell you what, we'll drop it $280 or $220, just so you're still realizing some of the discount, because I do think you'll be back for the amnio, and I don't want to be playing around with discounts later on. How does that sound? Yeah, they've done a bit of negotiation, we're in. And I think that you will literally, because of who you are and the fact you kind of command respect when you speak, I think you will have an alarmingly high number of people will take on orthotics and take on the whole thing if you just tailor it in that way.
Good. I'll write it out and have to memorize and not kind of make it my own, but yeah.
Make it your own, but just see what they do and see what they say.
I like the way that you do the recap at the end, because I feel like that's where it gets confusing for patients. Because there's so much that I go over, because I try to be thorough, right? Because there is so many things you can treat this with.
Yeah, but you've probably seen Carson's little pyramid. People remember, have you seen Carson's little pyramid of how people learn? They only retain 5% from a lecture.
Yep.
That's why your imaging and showing them the number. I like to say to people, look, your plantar fascia should be around 3.6 millimeters on the screen. Yep. Your good side is actually 3.8. You know, that's fine. It's only just above. But the side you got pain with is at 6. I mean, we've got really bad. Yeah, that's probably worse than I thought it was going to be from what you told me. That's really quite. I
like that, because you told, when you did your lectures, you talk about making them sit in it, and I think the way you make them sit in it is with the ultrasound.
Yeah. Whereas
I think you did some of your manual physical therapy, which I don't do. Yeah. But I could have them sit in it while I'm getting the ultrasound ready.
Yeah. And the ultrasound is the icing on the cake, because you go, look at this.
It's obvious. That's what always does it for me.
And then they're done. And you can say to them, look, do you want to get your phone out, take a picture, take it home, you know? Because then what they do is they're at dinner with their friends and they show the image. What else does he do? Have you got his number? You know, it's like a sales pitch.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Let me try that.
No problem. So we got another one in like a month's time. Is that right?
Yep. That'll give me a chance to practice. I'll tell you how many. You'll know by the number of amnios, because that'll if I can do the whole package, but I'll let you know.
So spam me with how it's going.
Okay. Cool.
All right, buddy. I'm glad we got this done today.
I appreciate you adjusting, and I think I got a lot of good value out of this. Appreciate that.
Good. All right. You take care.
Okay. Have a good night, Paul. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye.